So just one other quick piece to thank Sarah Bazemore, who's a VDOE school counseling specialist. She provided a lot of the information that we're utilizing in this particular presentation. So if you have any opportunity to work with her and VDOE around some of their social emotional learning work that they're doing, they've got really, really good stuff happening right now. So I think that that's a great resource for you as well. Okay, so let's talk, we'll start with talking about critical thinking. And so you can see there, those bullets on the left-hand side are the kinds of behaviors that we want students to show if they're going to be strong critical thinkers. And so, as we go through each of these, just think about in like your behavior matrices or in, academic practices that your schools, your divisions are supporting across the, in in classrooms and to target your content knowledge. How are these kinds of behaviors of students being targeted? So how are we making sure that students are having opportunities to reflect and to evaluate and make good decisions? And how are we encouraging them to not just think about their decision making now, but to develop that as a skill for them as adults? I mean, that's a big focus in your secondary implementation is how are we supporting students, not just to be successful while they're here in our schools, but in learning the skills for them to be successful as they move on to college and careers and being strong citizens for all of us. And all of those kinds of examples. So I'm going to show you a few examples on each of these 5 C's. Folks in the chat, you can let me know, are you seeing this 5 ways to make peer feedback effective in your classroom? Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Judy. Okay, so this is just so you have access to all these links. If you want to, make sure that students have an opportunity to provide feedback. So this particular author is just giving some kind of best practices around it and how to make sure that students have an opportunity to provide feedback to each other. And so you can see this that, like with many of the other kinds of academic strategies that we have, that having a good rubric is really helpful. So it gives you structure, it helps to move your conversation forward. But there's some other processes here, but certainly, like teacher playing a big role in it, giving students an opportunity to react to the feedback that they receive. Students being able to accept feedback is a really important skill for all of us, I think, to learn. So giving them opportunities to do that while they are in class is a great potential option. So think about how that can happen. And this is across all different content areas. Students can have opportunities to receive feedback if you give them the structure to do that. And I'll show you another example here. This list of brainstorming techniques, these are awesome examples. I definitely recommend that you, so if you have the materials link that Karen has put in the chat box, again, there you have the presentation, but you also have a handout with just these links. And I'm not showing you every single one of them, but if you want to support students in their brainstorming, again, structure is really helpful. So this is a mind map, which looks really complicated, but it gives you lots of structures. This fishbone diagram, I think, is a really great one for looking at cause and effect and working on decision making. And there's several more in this particular resource, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but just I'm just showing you a few examples, and we have more in each of the C's as we go through them. Okay, second one is creative thinking. Now, I will tell you that this is not a strength for me personally. I don't consider myself a really creative thinker. I tend to be very, kind of practical and pragmatic, but I know it's something that I need to work on. And I know it's something that when I was in the classroom, I was a middle and high school social studies teacher before being in this role, that giving my students more opportunities to be creative and not be as tied down to just getting the right answer all the time would have been really helpful for them and hopefully inspires them as they move forward to have more opportunities where they can innovate and they can think of new options, and it also really shows how you value who they are as people, if you're allowing them to in some ways make their own path or potentially make mistakes and figure out their own way to get where they want to go, so that we can really hit some of those mental wellness pieces and again those equity pieces if we're supporting all of our students. So again, I'll just show you one example here, which is this graffiti wall example. So this website, which is Read, Write, Think, they have tons and tons of different options. And so in this particular example of this graffiti wall, students actually have a digital graffiti journal, although you could certainly have them do it on paper. And in this case, they're reading a book for a literature class, but I think you could apply this again to any other content area. And then as they are reading it, they're encouraged not just to do, written in like complete sentences responses to what they're reading, but also symbols and drawings and any other kind of, media that they might be able to bring in around their response to it. And if you're doing it in like a digital version, like what's up here on the screen, students can go and search for images and videos and things like that that are matching up with their interpretation, and they can add that to it. And then you have opportunities for students to collaborate with each other, to share their own thoughts. And it just, again, it brings in so many opportunities for students to share how they're thinking and how they're processing the information. And it's going to open up so many avenues for analysis and for learning about lots of different options. Okay, moving along. I know I'm going pretty quickly here, but I want to make sure you all are seeing each of these. Okay, so the third one is collaboration. And this is, a crucial piece of our world today. And I don't think that's new. I think we've always needed to collaborate, but we are seeing more and more, I think, how collaboration between all different kinds of people can lead us to, novel ways of solving the problems or solving the issues that we're dealing with in our country and in the world today. And it also then helps to support our students not only in working together to solve problems, but also in how do you interact with someone if you disagree with them. I mean, this is just such a huge skill that I think not enough people really have right now. That would be so helpful if we were able to calmly disagree and discuss what we're doing, and we could move toward, we can have this more empathetic view. This word empathy is so important, and it's something that we can intentionally teach to our students. And so again, as you're thinking about your implementation, whether you're thinking about behavioral expectations or academic strategies or mental wellness supports, and at all tiers, how are we including opportunities for collaboration between our students and also between students and us, as the adults that they're working with. So two other quick examples. This is a much bigger, this is a multi-page document. If you wanted to do like a multi-day lesson around understanding others' perspectives, but you could just do pieces of it. But this is designed that students, they get questions and they're asked to rank them. So they give you some possible statements about, some kind of easy ones there is like chocolate versus vanilla or Facebook versus Twitter. Or I think for most of our young people, they're not even dealing with Facebook right now. They've got other things that they're using. But you get into some more heavy questions, certainly around being able to talk about issues in our community, in our school, and you could come up with all kinds of different responses for your own way of doing it. Students score it, and then they go around and they look at what other people thought. And then there's more structures. Again, I'm not going through every single one of these in completion, but there's multiple structures in this example to allow students to consider other people's perspectives, to think, to potentially adjust or change or adopt other ideas of the people in their classroom. It's a really great example. Another quick one, this Circle the Sage activity. And this is a pretty open option if you go with exactly how it's written here. But teachers have to be willing to kind of open up a little bit sometimes and release a little bit of control of the classroom to students, but just to honor what students do know and what their skills are. So asking students to, you know, figure out what they're good at, what could they share knowledge about, and make them, in this case, the sage on that topic, and set up some structures for other students just to learn from them. And absolutely, you could make this more directly connected to certain content areas, but in some situations it might be worthwhile to just let it be wide open and let students share, what did they know about, because they might know about lots of things that we could connect to, that we had no idea. So it's just another really, I think this would be a really fun option to do in a classroom. Okay, moving on, we got two more. I think I'm doing okay on time. So the fourth C is communication. You see this, and all of these are certainly connected, and they overlap quite a bit, as I suspect that but you can see there that really thinking about how do we listen to each other, how do we make sure that we're responding in ways that are respectful, that are useful, and the questioning piece. When I was in the classroom, I I definitely spent too much time asking students questions where there was only one right answer to that question. And as I have, learned more about questioning techniques, and the kinds of, the critical thinking and the analysis, and these communication skills that we want students to have, you know, giving options where we're asking questions where there isn't a single right answer, or students could have lots of different options of answers. Again, it just opens up so many avenues for students to learn about each other and learn about specific topics. So another resource here, this value of listening. This is more of an article about the importance of active listening, but at the bottom, there is the specific takeaways for teachers. So I love articles that have these little inset boxes on takeaways for teachers. I can just jump to and read those. But so this particular teacher had that they have a rule that, and someone is speaking, that no one else can raise their hand during it, because then students have to actually listen to what other people are saying instead of sitting there and thinking about what they're personally about to say. And I just think that that's a really great option to have in place, to let students know. Now, again, you can put that right into your classroom behavioral expectations around how students respond and behave with each other. And at the same time, so that's your VTSS implementation around behavior, but you're also then targeting this communication um, domain of the 5 C's and other pieces. So that's why we're trying to keep coming back to how we have this clear alignment. And what I was talking about just a second ago about knowing these different kinds of questions. This is an awesome handout that I want you to share with all of the teachers in your school or in your division. It's just a one pager, but these clarifying questions and these probing questions, and these are great kind of standard sentence stems or question stems to give to students when they're in small groups, when they're doing collaborative learning activities, to help them to talk to each other. And we know that they don't necessarily know how to do this when we first start doing these really fun collaborative learning activities. So, give them a resource like this that will help them to frame their questions in ways that they will better understand, and also, again, to make sure that they're staying respectful with each other in the event that they have disagreements or whatever it might be. And this again, the age issues here, this optional practice activity, it's just funny because the statement that they suggest is cell phones are better than land phones. I don't know how many of our secondary students are even going to have any experience with land phones. This might be a question for some of us that are participants today. But some different questions might be better. But this one pager is just a great resource to share out with your teachers in your schools. Okay, one more. That's citizenship. And again, as a social studies teacher, this is one that's really, really close to my heart, and something that I definitely try to teach to students as much as possible in my classes, and to really value how they were playing a role as citizens. But if you just think about opportunities for students to kind of co-create the classroom environment, that's again hitting your behavioral expectations that you're building. If students are having an opportunity to kind of share what kinds of academic activities they like and the ones that they don't like, they're co-creating that classroom culture as well. And that gets a lot more buy-in from the students because they were involved and actually determining what was going to happen. So we know that that's a huge piece. Two other, and our last two resources that we're sharing through this community circles option. So many of you might be familiar with restorative justice or restorative practices and use of restorative circles when there's been issues between students, or in some cases someone has been harmed in some way. But this article, this teacher uses that same kind of structure, but not specifically around, resolving conflict between students, but just for students to, have a structure for discussing community issues, school issues, all of those kinds of things. And I think it's just a really great option of using that circle strategy that comes from restorative practices and applying it to other community and school issues that students are going to are going to have an opinion about and hopefully can play a role in addressing, which is just awesome. And then the last one of these, and we don't have time, unfortunately, to share it, but at some point, if not today, sometime in the near future, click on this link it says do something cool. This video is awesome. It's 10 minutes. But this do something cool idea, and I know we may have issues with time in schools to commit students to have this option, but in this particular example, students, I think it's twice during the year, they get 2 whole days of school where they get to work on and develop a product or a final piece on whatever topic that they want to. Now, certainly, we're going to have to address, motivation and engagement, and how do we get every single student to be involved, and that's a bigger school culture issue. But if you go and watch this video, which I really think that you should, there's a lot of features in here that I think that you could bring into every single classroom around giving students, again, some agency, some opportunity to see how they can play a role in addressing concerns that they see in the world around them, and then giving them some freedom to address it the way that they might want to. So again, we're not going to show the whole video, but it's awesome. It was really inspiring for me to watch it. So I hope that you do at some point. Okay, so I just talked really, really fast, and we shared a whole bunch of strategies with you. I'm going to stop talking, and we're going to send you into some smaller groups. So Karen and Matt have now both put the link to the Padlet in the chat box. If you could, before we go into breakout groups, go ahead and click on that so that you're in it. The link should follow you into the breakout, but just to make sure it's there, we have the QR code as well if you want to use that. And so in your breakout group, and you should see what the name of your group is when you head to it. Matt, jump in and tell me if that's not the case. But you're going to have one of those 5 C's will be the focus for your group. Just asking you to share out what are some of the ideas or strategies that you're actively using right now, or even just considering using. Share those with us in the Padlet. Everybody can type in it at the exact same time. And then we're going to ask that your group, after between 5 and 10 minutes or so of people sharing your examples and what you're doing, pick one of those that you want to spotlight for everybody when we come back together, and be able to tell us, why that's a resource that you think all of us might want to hear. So again, you're going to go to groups, talk about your assigned C and how you're actively, kind of working towards that right now. And then we'll send you like a 2-minute warning that we're getting ready to come back. Probably do this for about 10 minutes. And then you'll be able to just pick one specific one that you want to share out. So Matt, if we're ready, think we can go ahead and send people to the groups. Okay, I think we've got pretty much everybody back, and I'm hoping that you are seeing the Padlet that you all were working on. Thank you so much for sharing all of these great ideas. This will remain available to you, so if you want to, you know, uh, hold on to this link somewhere to come back and look at what other folks were sharing and talking about. It's a we really appreciate that you all were able to share the examples that you have, and that you're not just hearing from us as coaches. We really want to hear from the implementers that are out there implementing stuff. So um, is there any group that wanted to go first in kind of quickly sharing one of the strategies that they talked about, or do I need to volunteer some people?
I can
Anybody?
speak for collaboration.
Great collaboration.
So we talked about one of our school systems implemented morning meeting and advisory time into their main schedule, daily schedule. So for the purposes of building community in the classroom, building a safe space, which is obviously going along with collaboration. So we talked a lot about that. And then another school system, Pennsylvania County, was talking about introducing new character education concepts monthly. And we talked specifically about empathy and how understanding others' perspectives plays into collaboration. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, collaboration group. And whichever school a school division had figured out how they were actually having time in their schedule for morning meetings at the secondary level, we want to hear about that, because I know I know that's been a struggle for folks. So
yes, that's Amherst County Public Schools.
okay,
And
so we'll get in touch with Amherst County. We want to hear about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Somebody else did almost jump in there before collaboration. Do you want to go next?
On representing critical thinking. I hopped
Okay.
in a little bit later, but Karen and I, Karen's from Colonial Beach. Karen, please jump in. I'm so glad that they're here. They're cohort 7, and she's excited to be a part of VTSS and was talking about how they had a meeting this morning and they're so excited. But we talked about critical thinking from the standpoint of why it's important. She mentioned project-based learning, as well as peer feedback. And that a lot of times the students, once they get to higher education, we're noticing feedback from higher ed that critical thinking is a skill that it has not been developed. And so they seem a little lost in the importance of concentrating on that, as well as the relationship with social emotional learning and how it aligns well with that.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And thinking about how are we, as Anna was speaking about there, how are we helping to prepare students for whatever they're doing after high school, which could be a lot of options, but in any option, critical thinking is really crucial. So how are we making sure that we're keeping that in there? So thank you so much, critical thinking group. Anybody want to volunteer to go next? We still need to hear from creative thinking and communication and citizenship.
I'm happy to share for creative thinking. We talked a lot about project-based learning and some of the products that we were able to allow students to create that were more creative, and kind of talking about also like how we're incorporating those products into some of our daily instruction through the Canterbury Tales and bringing in community through the teaching of British literature. I did link a resource that I used for one of my projects to developing service learning projects. So it's a scaffolded activity that helps students to work through developing their own service learning projects so that they can address the needs of their community. We use this specifically in relation to I Am Malala and addressing the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and kind of looking at how those impact our community and getting our kids involved and being citizens outside of the school.
Thank you so much. That was great, and really appreciate that you actually shared that specific resource there and the Padlet for us. So I love just having something I can throw right out there. So thank you for sharing and those specific ideas um, that you mentioned were great, and lots of overlap there as well with the other C's. So thank you so much. Okay, I think we got two more. Anybody for communication or citizenship want to jump in?
I don't mind speaking for communication. Our group was really, really quiet and a lot of muted microphones, so we don't have too many thoughts. But the one that I really liked was at Millbrook High School, the counselors worked on with students on how to communicate appropriately through email. And I can't elaborate because I'm not in the school, but
But it's a great idea. It's a great
yeah,
topic. And that's their uh, especially right now, with most of their communication with their teachers probably happening over email, depending on what your
we're
context is.
we're hybrid. Students had a choice of hybrid, or parents had a choice of hybrid or virtual.
Hmm.
And so we're about 33% virtual, and that leaves our hybrid. Day A is about 33%, and day B about 33%. So we're pretty
Hmm.
evenly split.
Well, and what an important skill, for students,
Yes.
right now, but also as they move into the working world, that those emails can get, sometimes you can't really tell exactly what people are saying. So it's important to make sure that we're, teaching people that skill. I think that's a great example. Thank you so much. Communication. So I think that we just have citizenship left. Anybody from the citizenship group willing to share? You had lots of examples on the Padlet.
This is Karen, and I think we should have been communication because we were still talking as the breakout room took us back. But if you take a look at the Padlet, we had lots of ideas. Everyone was generous in sharing, but different structures, different programs that are outward facing for citizenship, things like Kindness Matters, and scheduling regular activities to increase acts of kindness across students and the school community and the greater community, partnering with Habitat for Humanity, lots of care programs, food distribution, gift distribution, um, hanging wreaths, doing chalk pictures to raise morale of students and teachers. But we were so busy talking, we didn't necessarily pick a spokesperson. But I'm going to invite Tony, if he would be willing to finish his great thoughts as we were ending up, because he was talking about the importance of student-led symposiums and where students actually choose the topics of their choice. So Tony, I'm putting you on the spot. If you don't come on, then I'll figure this was really bad practice. But if you'd be willing to expand on that a little bit, I think it'd be really helpful to people.
You're fine. So I was speaking on student-led symposiums on students actually taking over the learning curve, in a sense. The students are taking over what they're going to put out, what they're learning. They're speaking to each other on topics that most likely they probably wouldn't feel comfortable speaking with adults or their teachers or necessarily an administrator. And you kind of get to the root of the problem, and you'll help out with just understanding exactly where you can help whatever the discussion is on.
Thank you very much. That's such a great example, and fits in that citizenship one. But I think probably could those student-led symposiums kind of cut across all five of the C's in those four domains. So a lot of great examples. We really appreciate you all taking the time to share what you're doing, and hopefully you heard something that was interesting or that you might want to try, and that you're maybe inspired to go out and try something, or that you'll take some time to look at um, some of the examples that we shared with you in the earlier part of the session that you can take back and utilize. So we're pretty much wrapped up then for the end of today's session. Karen, a couple times has put a link to our the evaluation form into the chat. If you would please go and do that for us before you are finished for the day, that would be really great. One other thing, there is a national PBS high school network. At the They send out quarterly newsletters with examples from schools all over the country. They also very regularly post resources and topics to their Facebook page. So if you just search for PBS High School Network on Facebook, if you're there and like them, you kind of become a member that way, and their stuff will show up. But it's a great option for you. And we just really appreciate that you have joined us today. So there's the QR code for the evaluation if you want to follow it. We have 2 more virtual community practice events that are going to be coming up this year. The next one is on Tuesday, January 19th. Also 3:30 to 4:30. It'll actually be the exact same Zoom link that you used for today. So you can just hold on to it and you've already got it. And we're going to be focused on implementation of social emotional learning practices, specifically in secondary schools. And we're working right now on lining up some implementers across the state to share their own experiences at both the middle and the high school level with implementation. So hopefully we'll have a lot of really practical resources for you and some options for you to utilize as you increase your SEL implementation if you're choosing to do that at the secondary level. So before you go, if you would please, complete that evaluation. Karen, was there anything in the chat that I should address before we say goodbye to folks?
No, people are appreciative of the resources shared, and we're practicing our 5 affirmations to 1 correction. Lots of kudos to school division participation and our team. So thank you, Nick, for facilitating such a great session.
Well, thank you so much. And unless anyone has any, other comments for the good of the group or questions, we're getting you out of here a couple minutes early, which I know I'm guessing no one's going to complain about. But yeah, please complete that evaluation. If you didn't get a chance to complete the attendance link, you may have to kind of scroll back through the chat, or kind of putting Karen on the spot here to throw that one back in the chat quickly. But if you didn't get a chance to fill that out and you could do it for us before you go as well, we would really appreciate it, just so we make sure we're sharing all of our resources with everyone. And otherwise, I think that's pretty much it for the day. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and week.